Hey everyone, we are excited to talk to Travis today about relationships and sexuality. So, just waiting for Brandy and Travis to come on. Hey.
Hello.
What's up? What's up?
Welcome, everybody. Hello. As you're hopping on with us today, we'd love to know who's joining us. Anything you want to tell us about your design? We'd love to know who's on. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Coffee Talk.
Cheers.
Perfect. I got coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's actually a London fog.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. Good morning, Carla. We've got some class friends here.
Yeah.
Hey. Cool. Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about your experience at relationships and connection charts and sexuality and all of the juicy stuff.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so fascinating to just when you think about it, human design, it's not really like human design to me anymore. It's more just like life. And you can literally take like part of life and look in the chart and see where it comes from, like see what's happening. I really like to think of it like, yeah, we don't really need this language. It's a new language and we learn it because of our conditioning, but really it's just like, it's nothing crazy. It's just life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're finding that more and more. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just everything. It's just what is going on. And now we just have words for it, more words for it.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of words for it. I was thinking yesterday, I was like, Ra could have made up a lot more words than he did. Like we don't not that many weird words that he came up with. Like he could have made up a million more words, I think.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you joining us, we met Travis in our foundation classes. Travis, did you take Living Your Design with John and Amy as well?
I did.
You did? Okay. So we took different Living Your Design, and then Teresa took Rave ABCs with the school. She took Living Your Design with the college, and then I joined you in Rave ABCs with John and Amy Human Design Collective and Rave Cartography, and now we're all in a practicum together. So we meet twice a month, like every 2 weeks, and we just deep dive human design.
Yes.
So one thing that we recognized was that Travis is really good at just like looking at relationships. Like he would always, his mind he's a 1-3. If you want to introduce yourself and your design, Travis, I should let you do that.
A 1-3.
First things first.
Yeah.
First things.
1-3 Splenic Projector on the cross of consciousness. All 4 of my incarnation cross gates are in open centers. So yeah, me and relationships have a funny relationship. Yeah, but I really, before when I kind of started my spiritual journey, I was part of a meditation community for a while and was just kind of like dipping my toe in it. And then I have a very dear friend of mine who is a sex and intimacy relationship coach now. She's doing very, very well. And so she kind of got me into the orgasmic meditation community in like 2015 or 16. And that was like my first kind of introduction into like sexuality as a spiritual practice. And, as a young man, and really, I just think the conditioning that we have around sex is so screwed up. And when I started doing these courses and like having my mind blown every single time, I'm like, oh my God, if we got sex wrong in our society, then we must have every other aspect wrong, and even worse than you know what we have conditioned around sex. So that was kind of like my huge awakening was around sexuality and intimacy. So it's kind of been a major theme for my my awakening going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How has human design shifted the way that you view relationships or even experience relationships, and especially as an undefined sacral? Because I'm very curious about how that kind of plays into things for you.
I'm curious about your 59th.
Right. Her and her husband have 59.6.
I know.
Surprised we don't have like 10 babies already.
Yeah, just being a projector, if you want to start on the surface, it's just, you feel like a weirdo. In every way, you just feel like you kind of don't fit here. And for me, relationships were really hard in the beginning. You know, I wanted to be the man that like walked into the bar and like commanded the room and like had a ton of attraction with, you know, everybody in there. And it just wasn't like that for me. You know, I was like, if I don't get somebody one-on-one, then nothing's going to happen for me, you know? So that was kind of my strategy of like dating and hitting on women in my early years, was like, I need to really listen to what they're saying, and I need to have a deep conversation. And, you know, being that type of person, I was never the hot guy that girls just wanted to like take home, you know, for the night. It was never like the one night stand type of energy. It was more of like, you know, if there's anything in it for me, like I need to get deep. I need to have that kind of like one-on-one interaction. So that was kind of like my first confusion, I think, of why am I not like my friends? You know, why can't I be that guy? And then learning I'm a projector, it's like, okay, yeah, no wonder it doesn't work. I can give that up and love myself. So.
Did you notice, like, so now that you know aura mechanics and things, did you notice that it would kind of be like, people would be like, what are you doing? You know, if you tried to like approach or tried to insert yourself?
I realized very early on, like I can make someone extremely uncomfortable with my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Just
yeah, accurate.
Could freak out, you know, like what are you looking at? You know, like I'm peering into your soul. And I didn't know either. I thought that was normal. But it was, I can make people very uncomfortable. Or the opposite, if they really wanted to be seen and needed attention, then I couldn't get away from them either, you know, and you're kind of stuck. I was writing a post the other day, like one of the projector's biggest downfalls is we can't politely ignore somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're either in the conversation, absorbing it all and listening, or you're in the other room. Mm-hmm. You can't like pretend to listen. It just doesn't work that way. And so when my attention's on you, you know it, you're either uncomfortable or you're loving it. But the second I try to pull away, it's gone. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all or nothing. And it can be very awkward to leave a social interaction or a conversation because people feel you pulling your energy away just when you get distracted by something else. So yeah, it was, it's intense, you know, the dating relationship world when you're not aware of how your aura functions when you're a projector.
Yeah. Oh, were you going to say something, Teresa?
Oh, how does it feel being a projector and being, I guess, like, I'm curious about how your undefined sacral feels when it comes to like sexuality in general, because like I have a fixed way of operating sexually, right? But I understand that undefined sacral is more fluid and it's inconsistent. And have you experienced that in relationship where it feels unbalanced at times, or?
It really depends on the connection and on the partner. My quality of sexuality, my sex drive, my, you know, like what I like. So before I came to design, there's these things called the sexual blueprints. You can like go take a test of
your
blueprint. Have you done it?
Yeah.
So I came out as shapeshifter, which is like kind of all of them. You can be turned on by all of them. And I'm like, that's totally what the projector is. You know, they say projectors there's no other type that's better built for Tantra. because our sexual experience, and we all are after our signature in everything we do, right? So even in sex, like I want a successful sex life, like I want successful interaction. And to me, that is like, can I guide the energy of my partner in a beautiful way? Makes me feel recognized and seen, and is enjoyable. So really, I find that it's very much dependent on what my partner's into. Is my partner sacral or not? You know, is the 59-6 present or not? So I really find it depends. But me on my own, like I'm pretty chill most of the time. I wouldn't say like I have a huge sex drive as a projector. I think Rob made a joke that's like, when we're done, like send them away, send them to the other group, send them to bed because we're exhausted.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about Tantra, because I feel like for me, that's like, meh, whatever. Like I need something to respond to. And Teresa and I were having this conversation the other day. What kind of sparked this was like, oh, the sacral's not an awareness center. She reminded me of that, which I know, but I was like, oh yeah, it needs to respond to something. And where my husband's a projector, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he would just love it if we would like stare at each other, and I'm like, like eye gaze. And I mean, he would, and I really recognize that, but I need to be in response to want to do that. And so it's this interesting thing, but I very much feel like, he likes those same kind of things. And projector thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're really concerned with the other. Obviously, that's our question, is who are you? So if, for me, I'll just speak from my personal experience. If my partner is having a good experience, that's everything for me. Like, I don't really care about myself. I don't care, whatever. It's easy. But if my partner is not enjoying herself, or, something's not going right over there, then, we get worried, and we want to guide in a way that really just pleases our partner first. So
what do you notice being in, whether you've been in relationship with sacral or non-sacral since you've had awareness of design, but do you notice a big difference dating or being in partnership with somebody who's sacral versus non-sacral?
Yeah.
What do you notice? Because we're both sacrally defined, so I'm like, we have no idea what that would be.
Yeah, there's just, the flavors are so different. I was thinking yesterday, I was like, okay, what are the temperatures of the different motors, And I was like, okay, to me, the sacral's like warm. It's like you're sitting in a car and you turn the heater on. It's like the heat from that engine coming in, and it can be warm, but it can get hot also. Then I'm like, I'm an ego being, and like the ego to me is just like abruptly hot. Like you touch that pan, you're like, oh fuck, that's hot, like ugh. And then I think of like the solar plexus, the emotional center, of like being in like a steam room.
Oh.
It's like steamy. There's like substance to it. It's like, it's sexy. Sometimes you can't see anything. And then other times the steam kind of like subsides. So to me, each one of those centers carries such a different flavor to it. And when I'm amplifying either the sacral or the emotional system, there's definitely a different flavor than a non-sacral. And so my ex was a 2212 manifest. And that's a very different flavor than sacral. So for her, it was more like the passion and the romance and like love. Everything was about love and like time, and it was just very romantic. Versus I think like more of a sacral being would be more of that like let's get it on type of energy, or like there's just that fertility that lives there. I think that's a little bit, it doesn't have to be so romantic all the time. It doesn't have to be so emotional all the time. It can be like let's make babies. Like,
it's so funny listening to this because I have the 1222, but I'm also a sacral being. And there's like two modes for me. It's either like I want to be wined and dined, and I want the romantic experience, and I want the poetry and like the eye gazing, or I just want to like get my rocks off.
Yeah.
It's like one or the other. And it probably depends on like where that's pulsing, right? And
Yeah.
and Brandy and I were talking about this, but so the sacral needs something to respond to. So I can't just go from like cold to hot like that. It's like I need something to respond to. So even, you know, if something sexy is on TV or something, I'm like, oh, I'm responding to this, you know, whereas like if it's just like my husband and I just laying down and I'm like, there's nothing to respond to, you know, I won't necessarily be like turned on. So that was like funny to have that realization yesterday. Like it's literally just a biological thing happening and my mind isn't involved at all. I just feel sensations in my body and I'm like, oh, I'm responding to this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the sacral beings that are watching too, it's important to know, you know, what are your gates what are your sacral gates responding to? You know, we were talking about that again the other day, Teresa. I have 27 and I have several sacral gates, but I have 2750. So, and 3410. So it's like, am I available or not? You know, do I want to nourish something or not? Do I want to be nourished or not? You know, it's just very like that. And it's not personal. You know, I think one of the things that non-sacrals, in my experience, it's like that they take that sacral response personally. And it's like, no, I'm just not available for that. And I don't know why. Like my sacral is just not available. Or that's not nourishing, you know?
Yeah. Especially like with the 659, I know people were asking about that. It's either open to intimacy or it's closed. And I think it's actually fascinating considering my husband and I both have that, because now when I like think back to our intimacy and that aspect of our relationship, it's like him and I are very much on the same page. We're either like, yep, we're doing this, or we're both like, nah. It's either like we're like staring into each other's eyes and it's like we're super intimate with one another, or we're just completely closed off to it. And it's just that energy just isn't available. And so in some ways, I almost think it makes it easier that him and I both have that. So neither of us ever takes anything personally with one another. It's just like, and we're usually like synced up even. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's just easy.
What lines of the 59?
For mine, I'll have to actually, I know I have a 59.5. I can't remember.
That's the good one.
Well, it's so funny. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about this who also had the 59.5. And I'm like, I've had so many experiences in my life where people have just told me like that they were sexually attracted to me. And I never would have thought that. And even women that are not into women said like, I don't know, there's something about you. And I'm like, I'm not even doing anything. And I used to some of my friends used to get upset with me because they'd think I'd be like flirting with their boyfriend. And I'd literally just be sitting there like not doing anything. So it's so true about the aura.
You know, it's funny because I saw someone for a little bit with the 59.5, the Casanova Femme Fatale. And then my really good friend who I was talking about, who got me into the orgasmic meditation community, whose whole business is, it's called Desire on Fire Community. Like that's her, which is really interesting because she doesn't have any activations in the collective stream, which is desire and you know, the clinging fire and the fantasy and all that stuff, which is so interesting. And she is a 59.4, which is brotherhood, sisterhood. And she's also the 34.20. So her design just plays out so perfectly. She's created this intimate sisterhood of women, and she's teaching them how to, you know, be intimate in a way. Like she has the power of that, the 59.6, you know, she has the channel, and she's also teaching the stream that she doesn't have, which is where we go to school, right? Like where we really get to learn about stuff. We can also be attracted to it and think it's broken and try to be that way. But from what I see from her, it's really like she has a great understanding of that collective stream because she has no applications there. And then she's using the rest of her design in such a specific way, you know, with that sisterhood. But I don't feel like with her that fifth line attraction isn't there. It's more of a friend's kind of first energy. So I think like the line has such a significant role to play in those states.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd be
That's
curious
fascinating.
what her motivation is, because I always pique an interest that
Mm.
people teach about desire, and like knowing that like 50% of the population's innocence motivation. I'm like, that's interesting.
I
Yeah.
think that was that's motivation.
So how was it being in a relationship as a projector with a manifester?
I think she's listening. And so it's so funny.
From like a design, from like design or mechanics, you know, we
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
first, I just want to say, like, there is no dating by design, right?
Yeah.
People ask me this question all the time. What's the best? What's whatever? And I know Ra didn't even
Mm-hmm.
go there into like dating by design. If your authority says yes, if you're responding to somebody, hey, that relationship, whatever the connection is for you. And this is kind of like for me and the manifestor. I think projectors and manifestors have such a special relationship because I think we're really one of the only types that can truly like understand them. Like I understand her on such a deep way. But mechanically, it was like on paper, we were not good together. She's just the 2212. That's all she's got. You know, I'm the 44, 26, 25, 51. So I'm the splenic ego projector. She's the emotional manifester. And when we come together, we're a 9-0 triple split.
Oh.
So it's like we're together, we see each other as like these totally different beings, but we don't connect. Her emotional system stays completely separate from my splenic ego. You know, like there's no connection there. So it was so weird to watch that play out. And then kind of come to design and see, whoa, like this is what we've been feeling, you know, like I would feel stuck close in proximity but not able to like get into those emotions, or you know, vice versa. And then I think Ra had a joke that, you know, the triple split relationship, it's like our most the best times are when we're like driving in a car to go somewhere, you know, because we're like on a journey to like go to whatever the place we're going. And we found that to be like very hilarious and very, very true. If we were moving towards something, then like we could connect in a weird way.
Did you ever try like going to public spaces and communicating if you were having problems communicating just the two of you?
Yeah, we loved going out to eat. It's interesting as the 9-0, like I hung out with her friends a couple of times. It really does feel like there's no room in the relationship for other people to kind of come in. And especially as a projector, like that's another thing. If you want to talk about sex, the sex course, and like Ra always has the joke of like no menage a trois for the projector. Like we can't group sex. You know?
That'd be a bad idea.
But it's like I think that's another thing in relationship I found for projectors, is it's really awkward in social settings, because I feel like if her friend's there and all of a sudden I'm talking to her friend, I'm completely ignoring her. Completely ignoring. And you feel bad, like, oh my God, is she going to think I'm like into her friend? Or, you know, am I like, okay, I have to like mentally decide who and when and how long to give my attention to each person to try to make sure everybody's happy. Because if they don't know that, it feels like they're being ignored. You know, it feels like I'm not paying attention to them. So it can be interesting if you just don't know how that aura operates. What was that?
Did she initiate the relationship?
She did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we met on
It was entered into correctly then.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I think we have to come back to like there's no such thing as bad and good. There's just experiences. And I think that's where people get really hung up, is like, what's the best partner for me, or what's the best connection?
Yeah.
And what am I most compatible with? And sure, I'm sure there are like profiles that are slightly more compatible with each other and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, if you entered into the relationship correctly from a mechanical standpoint and your authority was a yes, there's something in that relationship that you needed, even if it was painful or even if you suffered. There, especially as a third line, I would imagine, you know, it's like the bond's made and broken. My husband's a 3-6, and we were joking last night because in his 3-3 phase, we probably broke up 15 times. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. And it was actually mostly my doing, so that's kind of the funny part, but maybe I could just feel that he needed to break the bond.
You're like, pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Profile's huge, you know. But like, I've really gotten into bonding strategies lately. I think that's one of the most fascinating things to watch that play out, especially from the personality versus the body side. And I think that probably plays more of a role in the way we bond and the way we're successful or not in relationships, probably more than anything else. And you know, when Ross says what to do, you're really screwed. You know? Ross says what to do, it's like he's run out of any sort of explanation or sugarcoating.
What to do?
That comes a lot in the 1-3 in our bonding strategy. And so the 1 is pursuer, pursued, you know, so personality wise, like I like the chase, or I like someone chasing me. And then my body is bonds made and broken. So it's like my whole life I've been chasing somebody. And the second that something happens, I'm bored and my body wants to break the bond. And I start it all over again. And so that was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stay in a long-term relationship? You know, all that kind of stuff. And I would really find like me trying to force myself to be in any sort of like homogenized, normal, like stable kind of relationship that I thought was like what we were supposed to do. You know, it really takes a toll on like my spirit and like my soul of like, there's just that feeling there that like something's not right. I need to run. And so there's a few things I would do. One is like I would cause drama or like some sort of fight in order for me to say, okay, here's the reason why I need to step away. Here's the reason why I need to break the bond is because this whole thing just happened that I created. So that was like one excuse. There's a lot of things I did, but it's just, it feels like we need to redefine what relationship is for especially for a third line, and needing space and needing that time alone, because when we come back together, it's always that much better. You know, our strength is in the making of the bond.
Do you feel like a push-pull with your first and third line? Because the first line is all about security and foundations. And I also see that you're fear motivation. So I would imagine that kind of plays into it as well. Is that, I don't know. And then like I've worked with a lot of 1-3s that have struggled in relationship, and they're constantly like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I commit to somebody? And yet there's something in them, or maybe it's just their mind, that is really desiring the security of a long-term relationship. So I like what you're saying about how we need to redefine it and kind of look at it as like, I think people think a successful relationship is one where you never break up, but that's not true at all, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, that one line is so insecure. It's so freaking insecure. And we're constantly looking for the security. And I think you just nailed it. Like, I mentally would love a long-term stable relationship. And this is where it gets really interesting with mind and body. It's not me mentally rejecting the person. It's my body with the emotional resonance, allegiance, rejection, literally rejecting the other human being. Of, I'm not attracted to you. I don't want to have sex with you. I need to step away physically. And my brain is like, I want the long-term relationship. So it's so wild to see that it's such a body thing, and it's so connecting to the mind when the body just rejects and you're like, why? I don't know, you know?
Yeah. I had third line body, you know, till my Saturn return. And I resonate a lot with that third line life. And I'm a 4-6. And so I'd also be like, but I want to keep you close to me. And then my body would be like, you know, I would create chaos kind of to break that bond. But then I'm like, but stay in my network.
Yeah, you're still in the network though. Fourth line problem.
This sounds terrible, but I had quite the third line life, right? And there would be times I'd walk into a gathering of friends, or walk into a bar, and there's all of my third line experiences hanging out with other in my network. And I was fine with it. And I'm like, why am I fine with it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, that's, you know, the profile. We forget like how much that plays into it. And like we judge ourselves and we get up in our mind. Like, no, that was actually just me third lining life with my fourth line network. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And fourth lines, I've talked to a lot of fourth lines about this, and we're all like, dating apps are a no for us. I'll just go to my network.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So my ex was also a 4. She was a 4-1.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And God, I think it's so hard for the manifester, you know, in relationship, and there's such like a feeling, I think, for them with that aura, like, how do I get into intimacy, you know? And I think sex is an easy way to pretend to get into intimacy. So I think a lot of times from that standpoint, it's like, okay, let's not do the friends first thing. You know, the only way I really know how to break through and get to the intimacy is sex. So let's lead with that. And then we'll figure out how to kind of turn this into a friends thing afterwards. So when you start throwing in like auras with it all, it just gets even more muddy into the ways we are trying to break into the other. And I've heard, is it hard being a 4-line and being sexual? Because it is that friends first type of energy. I think I heard Ross say that it's, you know, because it's that brotherhood, sisterhood line, and it is like, we need to have the trust, we need to have the friends first type, and it's the confidant or not, you know, in the bonding strategy. And Ra would say that you can't be a confidant and a lover at the same time. So
I'd argue with Raw, because that makes it feel like, I mean, for me, it's like, that's what I need, that confidant. And it's like green light. Like we've commented before, like, are you even a fourth line if you haven't fucked a bunch of your friends?
Yeah. For me, it's like having that friendship experience. It's almost like I slowly grow an attraction to somebody. It's like, oh, we're hanging out, having a good time. There's no sexual attraction yet. And we get closer and we bond, and then we start, you know, I start having influence over this person. As a fourth line, I only really have influence over the people in my network. And it just like grows. It's like a slow thing that kind of grows. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, you're kind of hot. You know, it's just like all of a sudden, and, you know, maybe you have a couple drinks, and then one thing leads to another. You're like, holy shit, you're my friend. And after that happened so many times in my 20s, I was just like, okay, you know. And then I realized that all of my long-term relationships started out as friendships. And I remember giving dating advice to my friends and being like, just fuck your friends. And like, they were probably third lines or fifth lines, and they're like, that shit doesn't work for me. This is why design is so important, right?
Yeah, totally.
Did you think that was weird, or did it just feel so natural that you just kind of went with it? Or were you like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I doing the friends thing?
I mean, for me, I did kind of wonder that at first, like, especially because then there's drama, right? You're like, if you have a relationship with a friend that maybe one of your friends had already had a relationship with, and I worked in the restaurant industry for 15 years, and it is so incestuous. Like, everybody just fucks everybody in that industry. And then there's drama at work, and it was really funny because I dated this guy I worked with for like 3 years, and we were both bartenders, and we broke up, and, you know, I moved on, and then he ended up dating another girl at work, and her and I would get scheduled together all the time, and we actually got along great. I mean, he clearly had a type, you know, and people would joke and be like, you guys aren't like upset with each other, or this isn't awkward? And we'd be like, no, dude, like, it's all good. So I don't know. I think that was the only thing that I struggled with, was just like jealousy and drama, like within the friends group, because people thought it was weird. But for me, it just felt normal.
Yeah. And same for me. It was just like, sometimes I would be like, is this okay? But it'd be like, yeah, why not? Like, it makes sense. You know them. You know, it's like the only time that I ever felt icky was the one time I had a one night stand with somebody I didn't really know. And that made me, it's like, you know, but if it was like within my network, or they were like brought into the network, and like Teresa was saying, you like develop a friendship, and then it's like, oh, okay, you know, that all felt fine and normal. From the outside, people might be like, what? You know, like non-fourth lines would be like, I don't understand that.
Well, yeah, and like every time my husband and I would break up, well, we weren't married at the time, but he would go on dating apps and like bonds made him broken, and he would just like date a bunch of girls and it would never last. And then I would immediately hop into a relationship with a friend. It was like I had him lined up already. And I seriously think he thought that for a moment, like, were you seeing this person before we broke up? And it was like, no, we were just friends. And then it just naturally happened. And I was like a serial monogamous. Like I would just keep having monogamous relationships and I wouldn't date around. Whereas he would date around a lot. So it's just funny, even looking back at our experiences, how different they were. And he'd always be upset with me. He'd be like, you're already committed to somebody else. I'm like, I already knew them really well.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. That's bringing up so much with my ex, because she has a lot of friends, you know, and I, as a 1-3, you know, we're the seekers of truth and the establishers of truth, and there's no bullshitting us. And, you know, I think like now that you say that, I'm like, man, that's like the worst possible thing the fourth line partner could say to you. We're just friends. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, that means a lot more than I want it to be.
Yeah, like I've known my husband for 15 years before, not before, and then so we've been together for about 8 years. And then my son's father, we went to high school together. We didn't really hang out, but like he felt safe to me the first time I saw him, and I was like, oh, it was like it felt safe because he was in like the extended network, you know. It was like, oh yeah, okay, that felt fine, but that was like pre-Saturn return, so it was still a little wild. But yeah, there's not anybody that I've dated where they haven't been in the network.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things where it's only a problem if we make it a problem, right? And so design gives us permission to just actually do what feels natural and what's correct for us. I wish I would have had this information back then, because I wouldn't have given myself as much grief, because I think there was a period of time where I thought, I was like, is there something wrong with me? Is this not okay? Why are people acting like this isn't okay? You know? And I would think the same for third lines. It's just that bonds made and broken is kind of that permission slip, especially in your 20s when you're just like a big child anyways, and you have no idea what you're doing anywhere in life.
Yeah. I think the for me, like being a projector, having the bonds made and broken, I think is even harder, because like I can't not get invested, you know, like I can't not see you deeply. I can't not care. I can't not, you know, there's no, like there's just that connection, you know, that happens. So I think, you know, it's hard breaking that bond, and you know, it's bonds made and broken, what, you know, whatever. It's like if I break the bond with someone and I go off to do my thing for a little while, and then all of a sudden I want to make the bond again with the same person and I miss them or whatever. Now I'm the asshole who ditched them or whatever. And like, you know, but if I stayed, I wouldn't want him anymore. You know?
Right.
So that's like, it's so hard, I think, being the body third line of like, I need to go, but I still like you, and like I'm probably going to want to make the bond in a month or maybe a couple of weeks or maybe next week, but it's like that's not allowed, you know, and people take it so personally of like, you know, you're whatever, fill in the blank. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's like those dating rules that you see that are like, when it's over, like don't go back to the person, and that like totally doesn't apply to third lines at all.
Yeah.
On the flip side, as a fourth line, you know, I just was kind of reflecting on something where, like, when I moved and I didn't have a network, I didn't date. Like, when I moved to California for a year, I didn't date anybody because I didn't have, you know, it was like not safe, didn't feel safe. And I travel a lot and go to retreats and, you know, masterminds and all of that stuff. And I would go there and people would like find their person there. And I'm like, you guys just met. That is weird. Like, what are you, you know, like, oh, you're just like, hey. And I'm like, oh, you don't even know each other. Like, that would just be like mind blowing to me. But they're just probably designed that way, you know, maybe they're third line, who knows? Yeah, it's just, or fifth lines. I don't know, but it would just be like very interesting to me. So before we go judging everybody and how they date or how they connect with each other and all of that, like we're so differentiated, but even that profile line tells you so much.
Yeah. And just having awareness can be so healing and beneficial to a relationship, you know, of like, hey, if people are, you know, buying in, it doesn't have to be one, you know, and that's, I think, what human is about, is everybody, even if you are a 1-3, you know, what type are you? How does your aura function? You know, what streams do you have in the solar plexus system? And it just gets very, very unique. So yeah, accepting each other for who we are always goes back to that. I was thinking this morning, I was like, do you ever have those people where you say like you're cold and they look at you and like, it's not cold, what's wrong with you? Or like your temperature's off, you know? I don't know why that came to me this morning, but I'm like, that's the most like fucked up thing. Like, you just let me be cold? Like, like, who are you to tell me what the temperature of my body is? Like, that's how homogenized we are. Is like someone's gonna shame you for the temperature you're feeling.
Yeah. It's like gaslighting.
Yeah.
You're crazy for thinking you're cold, even though that is the truth in your reality right now.
Yeah.
So I want to
go for it.
I want to talk about connection charts, because I know that Teresa and I have both had this where people will reach out and maybe they do a foundation reading and then they're like, hey, can you look at my partner and see if we go together? Yeah. Can you know, or for the people out there that are like looking for their, you know, harmonic profile, like I can only date, you know, this, and because I'm a this, you know, you start getting in the mind too much about it. And you know, just going back to like living your own design first and following your strategy and authority and like looking at the beauty in the connection chart, even if you have like so many compromised channels and, you know, you have no electromagnetics and you're a 9-0 triple split, you know, there's, if you're following strategy and authority, what has been your experience? Have you had any readings where people are like, hey, will you look at my partner and see if we match?
All the time. I think it's one of the most fascinating things to do. It's one of my favorite things to do. To look at people's connections.
Yeah.
Where do I want to start with this? I think I get in a little bit of trouble in the beginning as a 1-3 because I'm automatically attracted to what doesn't work. Love diving into like, here's what you're fighting about. Here's where it's not compatible. Here's, you know, why you're running into problems. And the first couple I did, I didn't leave them with enough like beauty of the connection, because I just kind of like, oh, that's, you know, whatever. The 4-6s can handle the beauty. Like, let me take, you know, what's not working. But I think, yeah, you can find beauty in any chart. Something's coming up for me in a reading I did the other day, which was fascinating when we really got to the core of where the communication breakdown was, because I think a lot of it is just like not being able to communicate correctly, because we don't know how the other person communicates. She was a quad left and he was 3 parts right. I think the only left he had was his design nodes, I think was left. And what we got down to, what the real issue was, is when he was like off doing something, or he learned something, or he had some sort of experience, when he would come home, she would ask him like, hey, what did you do? Or like, what did you learn from this thing? And he'd be like, I don't really know. Like, this happened and this happened, and that would be it. And she thought like, what's he withholding from me? Why isn't he, you know, she could give this completely detailed description of like what she went through and what she learned, and get it out in the logical, structured way. And she was mentally defined as well, and he wasn't. And he even said like what really attracted to him about her in the first place was the way her mind worked, you know, and how beautiful her mind was. But when she was asking him to give her that back, he couldn't. You know, I'm right brain. That's been one of the biggest lessons for me in my experiment so far, of like, hey, I used to take notes for readings.
Yeah.
Like hours of notes.
Same.
Same.
I'd get on the reading, an hour and a half would go by, and I'd be like, I didn't look at the freaking notepad one single time. Like, what am I doing taking all these notes? You know, like so what I really got down to with them was like, you're not asking him the right questions. You know, get more specific, like you needed to draw out the experience from him and draw out the details that you're looking for. He's not going to be able to just give it to you. So that was just a beautiful thing to see, you know, how just the way are we left or right minded and brained, you know, that could cause huge communication breakdowns.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't even really, I think my husband and I are both right brain, right mind. So I think we just kind of like naturally operate in that way together, and it's never been an issue. But now thinking about it, like past relationships that I've had where we have had communication issues, and I also have an abstract mind. So I'm like, I have gate 62, so I feel like that helps me out sometimes. But for the most part, my mind is just like soup of random shit, like ideas, and I tell stimulating stories, but sometimes I don't even know where they're going.
Yeah. The variables are really helpful, you know, in relationship dynamic, and I didn't realize as much how they were until Teresa and I have the same, we're right, left, and like what our husbands are both active in left environments, right? And so we would like talk about like, we just want to be in loaf, and they're like doing stuff, and maybe they're like silently judging us, like all you want to do is like loaf, and like, you know, that could even that, like, why aren't you as active as me in this environment? Do you not care? Do you not have any energy and motivation? Are you a potato? Like
Yes.
Yeah.
Potato status 100.
And so that's where too, like communication about understanding if you have differences in environments and things, it's like, give me something to respond to.
That's huge. I had so much shame around that, like so much shame. I'm right in also, and as a projector, the non-energy being, I would get into an environment and feel like, okay, I gotta cook, I've got to do the dishes, I gotta, like, you know, people are expecting you to like help out. I just went on that trip to Michigan a couple weeks ago, and was in like insane place. We had like a one of the girls was a chef who was like cooking all the meals, and I did not feel pressured to do anything to help out in any way. Like there was no judgment on me, and I could just like be most like liberating, healing, like enjoyable experience of my life. Because yeah, like you said before, people I think have so much judgment in variable, because you're supposed to put in your work, and you're supposed to help, and you're supposed to be the active, you know, whatever. Yeah.
And if you have like a quad left partner, and you're even quad right or right at all in the mind or the brain, and they're like, we have this routine in our house, and the quad left is like, we have this schedule and this routine and all this stuff, and then they're like, why aren't you following the routine? We have it written down, we're supposed to do this at 8-10 a.m. and that would freak me out.
Oh God, could not.
Yeah. Also, your kitchen's environment, so how did that feel for you with all of the people alchemizing and being around you, and did you feel like really good in your body?
I think I healed so much.
I could feel that, like even just watching your stories, I was like, oh my God, he's healing so much.
It was the most beautiful kitchen I've ever been in, you know, and it was just so open and like inviting, and there was just like, yeah, cooking going on. I do love to cook when I'm in the mood, like I really do, but to have other people there like doing all the work, it was just like, it was so healing to just chill and be accepted in that environment, you know. And it's funny, the place I'm in now, I share a kitchen upstairs, and you know, really, I don't really go up there that often. And I think that's like one of the biggest things. I literally need a kitchen. Like we can take these in a very literal sense. Yeah, it was amazing being in there.
And did you feel you could relax as a non-sacral, because chances are you were surrounded by a bunch of sacral beings, and so were you able to relax? Because oftentimes we see the non-sacrals zipping around.
Yep, I can. And that's one thing I've really started to embody, of like, if you want me to be here in order to like pitch in or help out or be like one of the thing, like you're not correct for me, and this place isn't correct, and I'm fine with that, and I'm okay with saying I don't. You want me to do the dishes right now? I'm not going to do it. Nope, not feeling called for it. Don't have the energy for it. Like, not interested. I don't care anymore, you know, and it feels really good for me. And I think, you know, people can resent that or whatever, but in that community I was just with, there was none of that, like zero judgment, zero expectation. I'm like, okay, this is the right environment for me. Like, these are the right people.
Because there are people that like doing that stuff. Like, I'm one of those people. I weirdly love doing dishes. Like, it's just, it's weird what the sacral is satisfied by, and I don't judge it anymore. Like, sweeping and doing the dishes are somehow weirdly satisfying for me. So it's like, when you're with the correct people, like, let's say we'd end up in a space together and I'm like, no, I like doing the dishes. Like, you chill over there. It's all good,
like,
you know? And,
I got right. Preparation. I'll do all that. I'll fucking nourish you.
Well, yeah, and I would think, Travis, you probably have it's probably been a challenge for you to decondition, because you do have that hanging gate 27. And so I would imagine once you like hook into a 50, or you even just have a defined sacral being around them, there's this like I would imagine the mind jumps in like, hey, you need to respond, you need to nourish, you need to take care of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to be responsible for some part of this.
Yeah. Gate 50, undefined in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would overdo a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. There's one interesting thing I wanted to ask both of you, that in regards to like your energy and sex. I heard in a course that if the generator isn't like satisfied in the work that they're doing, a lot of times sex can actually be a way to like burn off some frustrated energy that didn't get used, and it can kind of turn into like, okay, I'm not operating correctly, I'm not doing things that are satisfying me, so I'm going to kind of use this as a crutch just to like unload. Have you experienced
100%,
120%?
Yes. And that's where I think it can become like misleading, because then you think that is the thing that's satisfying you, and that's the thing that's going to satisfy me, so I need to do that to feel satisfied in life.
Yeah. Well, me and my ex, it was not a healthy relationship at all. It was like very toxic, but usually those are the relationships that you have the best sex life in. And at the time I was bartending, and I was getting burnt out, and I was getting frustrated, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's when I started building my own business. And I realized as soon as I started doing personal training and doing work that was satisfying, I was very disinterested in the relationship, because that was really the only need that I was getting met, if I was being really honest with myself. And so it was like, when we weren't having sex, I really didn't want much to do with him. I was like, oh, you're funny, like, you're a cool person, but like, I don't really want to be intimate with you emotionally. You know, I don't really feel safe with you in that way necessarily, like I do with my husband. And so it's really interesting looking back and thinking about, oh, I was just so frustrated, and that was the only thing giving me an outlet at the time. And so I let it go on as long as it needed to before I found satisfying work.
Even within the relationship dynamic, if you're not satisfied with your partner. So in my experience, that's what happened with one of my long-term relationships. It was like the relationship wasn't fulfilling or satisfying. So it'd compensate and just have like I'd get satisfaction from sex, and it was like a lot. And I was like, okay, yeah, this works, you know, like, whoa, to think about it like that. Yeah. And sometimes I have to have awareness, because I'm so satisfied in life right now and work and what I'm doing, that I don't think about that.
Yeah, it's like you don't even have energy for it all the time.
Yeah, and I have a projector husband who is like, hey, and I'm like, I just feel I don't know. I don't feel like I need that, because I'm so satisfied in other ways. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I need something to respond to.
No, the sacral either has energy for work or sex, and sometimes it's not both, right? If you're using up all of your sacral working, sometimes there really isn't much left for sex, you know? So it's kind of, it ends up being, I wouldn't even say a balance, because it's just life. It's like, oh, this is just how today went, you know, where other days you do have energy for it. So
yeah, I'll tell my clients too, like, you know, at the end of the day, if you haven't let out that energy and you need, you know, because it could affect our sleep. Otherwise, we get those second and third winds, and we don't sleep because we have this renewed energy. Maybe we've responded to something and it kind of sparks something because we haven't used it for the day. I'm like, have sex, masturbate, you know, get that sacral energy, because it's not about like necessarily even how you get it out. It's just getting it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that feel for you right now, Travis, with having the 2034 for whatever 4 months or however long we have it? I would imagine non-sacrals are like, holy shit, I have way more energy for sex than I usually do, or whatever.
I feel like a different person.
Because you're an MG.
Well, I've had all 9 centers activated for I don't know how long. It's been,
oh my God.
in my transits, everything's hooked up. You know, I have the 1949, I've got the 3420, we have the 4323 right now.
You still have transitoriness?
No.
Oh, no.
That's coming back because apparently, what planet was there?
Retrograded, I think.
It's still retrograde.
Oh, okay.
Forever. And I'm like, wait, when's it coming back? Now it's in the 4th line of the 22, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm just like counting down the days. I'd love to know the date that back in, because that's going to be a 2.5
Neptune
period. Neptune. Yeah. But yeah, I think now that it brings up a lot of like, I think I am very much, I can feel my sex drive really come alive and really disappear based on transits for sure. And, you know, I don't know if it's TMI, but yeah, lately it's been just like through the roof in a way where I'm like, who am I? Like, what's going on right now? It's very different.
Well, that and channel awareness. You have this awareness of this, enhanced awareness of that.
And genius to free. I just pulled up your transit chart because I was curious. I'm like, holy shit, you got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, there's a lot. And you know, I just try to live moment to moment.
Do you find as a projector that when you're following strategy and authority that you're less affected by the transits?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
You're just like, they're intense right now. Yeah.
You do feel it, you know. Yeah, I would probably say no. I still think I would follow maybe it's harder to follow my strategy and authority.
Yeah.
I think that would be a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Right now I want to be a manifestor, you know, and something doesn't happen for a day and I'm like, what's going on? How do I make it happen, instead of, okay, wait for my invitations, you know? I think that's probably the hardest part when I'm so activated, is just staying slow. You know?
Yeah, when I would think like the transit activations can hijack your definition of it too. So depending on what you have going on, it like almost amplifies your definition, where you have, you know, that 2551 channel of initiation. And that's just like, that's such an intense channel to me. And then to have that on top of everything else you've got going on, it's almost like, yeah, that feels like
I had something to bring up the other day that was really interesting because, you know, that's a channel of initiation. And I'm like, the last thing the projector is supposed to do is initiate. So I'm like, okay, I've had to really figure out what that really means. You know, it's not me. It's like I go through initiation. And I'm starting to really see what my design does to other people that I'm around. Like I initiate people all the time energetically, just by being there. It just happens. You know, I'm not trying to do anything. It's become really obvious. But she said to me, like, if you had gate 20, you'd be a manifester. And I was like, oh, I really looked at like what I was missing to be a manifester before. Like, that's really interesting. So I think there's 2 gates that if I had them defined, I would turn into a manifester, which could be big conditioning for me of wanting to do it now and wanting to, you know, hurry it up, which is, spot on.
Yeah. And even looking at those gates individually and looking at like not self themes and like, how are you playing that out?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow.
How does fear motivation, do you feel that fear motivation, like when you enter into a relationship, do you kind of like dive in and get a whole bunch of information, or how does fear motivation work for you or play out for you when you enter into a relationship?
To be quite honest, I haven't dove into motivations that that deeply. I've had some discussions around what fear motivation is. Still a little murky for me, but I think what it comes down to is like, I don't do fluff. I don't care about the surface level stuff, which I think some people wouldn't even consider surface level. I consider surface level. Like, I want to get down to like the depths of who you are and like really understand you in that sort of way. Like, what's your trauma? You know, like what, like give me the real deep down stuff that is going to be affecting you and affecting the relationship and affecting me. You know, my whole thing is like, don't give me the story. What's the one underlying thing below that story that's really causing all of this to happen? So I think that might be some fear motivation of like, I just need to get down to the one thing, really, so that we can, you know, they say fear is the precursor to intelligence. You know, that's where we became intelligent out of strategies to deal with, you know, it's pretty much survival stuff. So me, I'm very focused on like, no fluff, no surface, like give me that one thing really deep down. I want to get to know you in that way.
That makes a lot of sense, because my mom is a fear motivation emotional projector, and no joke, anytime I'd have friends come over or anything, they'd like leave the house crying, because she would, like in a good way, you know, she would just like get in there, or even just going to a store with her and she's like talking to the bag person, and is like like talking to them about their childhood trauma, and I'm like, Mom, not appropriate, not the place. It's like, I'm like, if you need to learn, I almost feel like with motivation, this is just from like what I've noticed, and I would think maybe it'd be even more so for projectors because you're about the other. I almost need to witness it in somebody else before I can see it in myself. And even, you know, with my motivation, I didn't really understand it until I engaged with another desire motivation person. And so I'm like, just observing different motivations being correct has really helped me learn about it, especially with my mother, because fear motivation was one that was very confusing for me when I first learned about it. And now I'm seeing her and I'm like, yeah, she knows all the things. And she like finds the thing, and then she finds the 5 things underneath that. It's like, you think you go deep? Oh God. She goes deeper than deep.
We both have fear motivation mothers, so
that's fun.
You know, it must feel like kind of like a triple whammy being a first line projector with fear motivation, you know, entering into a relationship that can be intense for the other.
With
if they have no idea.
With the initiation channel.
With the channel of initiation,
Yeah, look out. I think there's a certain type of person that's attracted to me. And it's someone who wants to go, someone who is like, there's something here for me to learn. You know, this isn't maybe the most romantic, like love-filled, emotional relationship, but there's something here for me, and I'm about to get initiated, and let's do the damn thing. You know, and I can't help myself. It just goes there. Yeah. But that's kind of like, if you look in my past relationships, like I'm the guy that comes in, and then we have this like big breakup, and then they get married and have kids after me. You know,
so you like plow through all the stuff, and then
there's like something that they needed to get over, or they needed to learn in order to get to a place inside of themselves where they could attract what they really want in life. You know, so a lot of times, you know, especially with all my incarnation cross gates being in open centers, I really feel like this energy that comes in to like initiate somebody into some like positive, healthy way. They can then break the bonds and go find their dream person or whatever.
I was going to ask, what's, you know, let's get real for a minute. Not that we haven't been this whole chat, but like everybody knows about my sex life now. Hi, hello. But what's like a criticism that you've received from partnerships, or like, do your ex-partners resent you for something specifically?
I think, well, especially with the last one, it's my avoidant tendencies.
That solar plexus.
Solar plexus.
Hey, you know it's a problem though.
Hey.
What do you do? A 2212 4-1 manifester with an open solar plexus. I'm like, you know, she's like, you won't accept my love. And I'm like, love doesn't even exist. You're my love. You know? I don't believe that, but it's just like love to the 2212 is so different than it is to the open solar plexus. So I think there's been some like unavailability to go deep into emotions and like into that kind of really deep connection, I guess. And I think it's easy for me to kind of stay on the outside and just want to like keep digging and keep initiating without really opening myself up. I don't care about myself as a projector. And I think a lot of times I'll default to my partner of like, oh, well, what's going on with you? Like, let's talk more about you. So probably that. Yeah.
Yeah, with that open solar plexus, I've been finding myself like when me and my husband are in like deep communication and he's having emotions. He has 3740 and he's processing stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, stuff is coming through me, and and then I'm like sad about something, or I'm like really emotional, and I'm like, and then I step away and I'm like, actually, I'm not even that sad about that thing about myself, you know? So I have to, where it's hard for me to find a balance to like be vulnerable and express my own emotions, because sometimes I step away and I'm like, that wasn't me. That wasn't actually how I feel about myself. I'm pretty okay with it. Or am I? I don't know. Open head. Here we go.
That's it. Really deep, because I've had that experience where I feel like I'm almost acting of like, am I not open? Am I not vulnerable? Or am I just not that deep in those areas? Or do I just not really care? And when I'm around, especially in the penta or the wa, whatever, we can really go to those places, but then step out, I'm like, I think I was lying. Like, was I just bullshitting everybody, or was I really there, you know? And we almost feel guilty that we can't get that deep. That's like really making my head spin, Brandy.
Wow. That is it.
Yeah.
Because I start like hashing up this stuff and I'm bringing it up to the surface. And then I'm like, yeah, at one point I might have felt like that. But like in this now moment, I don't. Because I'll be like, what did I do? Yeah.
I almost just think of you being like, my eyes are watering. What's happening? You know, it's like there's not the conscious aspect of it. And as a defined solar plexus, it's really fascinating to witness that in undefined solar plexus. And we were even talking about this in class the other day about how the defined ESP has such a capacity for emotions. And it makes a lot of sense now that other people are almost shocked at the capacity that I have and why I've chosen my particular line of work, where I do help people move through trauma and I can handle a lot of intense shit coming at me and I'm like not affected by it. Whereas for undefined solar plexus, it's almost like, whoa, I didn't know that was coming, and like now I'm processing all this and I don't know what to do with this. I feel like I almost have a bit of a shield with my defined solar plexus.
Yeah, I always make comments and I'm like, give them to me after Teresa's processed them. Like, go to Teresa first, process that stuff, and then we just like boom, move up, you know, like, because for me, I mean, I can handle that in a small container, but I can keep that. It's like a shield, but too much of that, and I'm like, then I start thinking I'm that, and then it starts leaching, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you have a lot of awareness.
I mean, and we have to talk about, if we're talking about sex and relationships, we got to talk about the solar plexus, right? Because we attack each other anyways, and this might be the most people on the planet, the emotional versus the non-emotional. I can get very touched, like really easily, like tear up or cry or be very affected by emotion, but they're not mine. It's always I really feel that person. I really feel, oh God, that story is touching me in a way that's like completely overwhelming, but it doesn't make yeah, they're not mine, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. And then sex comes from, you know, all the streams of sexuality go through the solar plexus. There is no sex without emotion. So this is just like,
Yeah.
wild.
So being undefined emotionally and being with emotional partners, have you noticed like almost like a avoidance if they're processing emotions and you're like, no, I can't have sex with you right now because you got so much, and we're all fifth and sixth tone, so we have that like extra sensory, you know, it's like, and so maybe for you it'd be like, I can't touch you because you got some unfinished, unprocessed stuff, and I can feel it. I'm amplifying it, so I don't want that even closer to me. So there's all these layers, right?
This might sound bad, but my whole thing is like, this isn't real right now. You're not gonna feel like this tomorrow or in an hour. So
that's the worst thing to say to an emotional. I'm telling you right now, don't ever fucking say that again.
I don't.
That's
I've
why
never
people
said
think
that.
cold,
In the back of the mind, I've
yeah.
thought it.
They think we're cold-hearted, and
yeah.
we have defined egos, so it's like comes out.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if you want to really just put, especially a manifester, if you want to make them angry, an emotional manifester, you say that when they're experiencing feelings. I think that's the thing that I'm like.
Yeah.
That's why I love doing the work that I do with clients, because I understand their emotions on such a deep level, and I know that it feels so fucking real to them. And I'm like, maybe nobody else understands your reality while you're having this emotional experience, but I will sit here and validate this for you, because I know when there's nothing quote unquote real happening, but it is so fucking real to me. And it's like I have blinders on and I can't see the forest from the trees because that emotional energy is just taken over me in a wave. It's like I really have that deep, deep compassion for people, but I can totally see how an undefined solar plexus would be like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here?
Well, I have so much deconditioning to do.
Yeah.
Plexus, and it really came up in class the other day too, of like, I can't even hang it. Like, you know, maybe it's not always correct, but I could meet people in a more vulnerable state and have more understanding and compassion, because I get depressed. I get very melancholic with, you know, I have the 60 and the 25, 51. Like, I can really go down. And in those states of down, I know how that feels. And that's real. And that's like, everything's terrible. I hate everything and nothing's going to happen, you know? So I can understand like those downs from that point of view. So yeah, I have a lot of deconditioning to do there.
Hey, you're aware of it, and it takes time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that ESP, the ego and the ESP are just, oh man, they're brutal. They really are. Like, my friend Sarah lived with us for the last year, and it was, we did a chat on this, but it was such an amazing experience to live with completely open emotional and to like really witness her experience and the contrast of the world, that like the lens that we felt and saw the world through. And it was incredibly healing for me as well, and it is informative. And you really just see we operate completely differently in the world, you know.
We live in different worlds.
100%.
Like,
100%.
Different realities. Like no joke.
Full on.
There's realities.
Yeah. My husband and I'll tell him that we'll be in, you know, he'll be having emotions. He'll be emoting, and I'm like, I think we're on two different planets.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll say that because I'm just like, we are, and that's okay. But I'm just like, whoa, we really are. Like, he'll be going through something, and I want to have compassion, but then in my brain, I'm like, that's not even real, because it's not real for me. But that's just my solar plexus. But yeah, lots of learning in that center.
That was really apparent when I came and stayed with you guys the last time, because it was like, I think it was different because I didn't have Thomas with me, and so it was like, I'm just observing you guys in your element, and it's like, oh, it hit me, like they're literally living in completely different realities, and it's the emotional reality and the undefined emotional reality.
Yeah, all these nuances, and people think that it's, you know, it's up to them and following their strategy and authority to like continue in a relationship and to work through these things, or to gain the awareness of it. But so many people will just be like, oh, this isn't my person because we're on two different planets. And that's not true for me.
No.
You know? So.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, I think that's where human design, it's like, again, the foundational teachings of human design is like, don't try to change somebody's definition. It's not love unless you're really loving them for who they are and allowing them to be themselves. And that's a process. Like, you're not going to just do that 100% right away, but it's always being open to understanding that person on a deeper level and just knowing that you live in different realities, and that's okay. And I think the difference between, you know, like having compassion and partnership and really understanding that person is being able to like imagine what their reality would be like and just kind of step into it for a moment. Just be like, if I was in your reality and this was my lens, what would this feel like? And that's where that deep compassion really comes from. It doesn't mean that you'll actually know what it feels like. That's impossible. But just having the willingness, I think, is really what changes things.
Yeah. And forcing it, trying to be 100% understanding right away doesn't feel correct for me either, because I have to learn and decondition slowly. Otherwise, it could be too much of a shock and be like, I wouldn't be me. We got to be us and autonomous in our own relationships, in partnership with other people.
Right. And that's like the difference between interdependence and codependence is like, how can we still be ourselves and respect each other's realities and not force the healing or the clarity to happen faster than it's meant to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, it all starts with you living your design. You know, it has nothing to do with your partner, nothing to do with anybody else. It's you living your design. And you said something so awesome the other day, Teresa, and you know, spending a week with that community of sex and intimacy embodiment coaches, what really came up for me and what I think is missing so much from human design is an embodiment practice. You know, so many people don't know what the fuck the sacral response is. You know, do you know how many 2034s I have who are like, I'm a reflector or I'm a projector, you know, that's what they think they are. And I'm like, you're a freaking like pure manifesting generator. Like, you don't understand the power you have inside of you, or you do, and they're scared of it.
Yes.
So much power. And they're just out of their body and they don't want to go into the body. So it's like that, I think, is so key for us to have some sort of, you know, self-pleasure practice, or like, you know, get it intimate, like start doing some sort of something that gets us into our bodies so that we can even live our design. I think that's really.
Yeah. With yourself first. So then, you know, what intimacy is with another person. So my husband has been like forced to get into his body recently with all that's been going on with him. And I've been patient with his process of like him experimenting with his design and all of that. And I'm just, you know, there's like this disconnection with intimacy for a little bit. And I'm like, what is that? And I was like, I feel like I need you to like make decisions or something. So he's 3740. And yesterday he like made a decision, and he sent an email and he just read it to me, and it was like powerful. And I was like, right here, right now, that energy, like that. And it was just his 3740, like gaining clarity and taking action. He felt support to take the step to provide for the tribe. And I was like, that is the hottest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, you know, it was nothing on the physical. It was nothing like, you know, it was just like him living his design and honoring his emotional process and all of that. And me being a sacral, very impatient person, but learning patience. But it was in that moment I was like, there it is. You know, it doesn't need to be all this fluff and hubbub and we got to do this and this and this to make this work. It was just like allowing him to live in his design and have his own experience. And I'm like, shit, that was amazing. But then I had to go to work. And I was like, dang it, I got to go to work.
Fuck work.
I was like, why do I have to go? I'm self-employed. I could go to work whenever I want, but I had a meeting. I was like, no, I have a meeting. I got to go. You're leaving me hanging.
Vision, Brandy.
It was that emotional process that like turned on my solar plexus, gave my sacral something to respond to. You know, I was like, ooh, You just process your emotions healthily. You just took action. Your channel's like pulsing, and I'm like here for it.
Yeah, well, it's also like that was probably like one of the, I don't know if it was the first glimpse or maybe just the first time you really felt it, but like of him being not in transference and being in his correct motivation, which I find that with projectors, that shit is so much more palpable when they're in transference.
Yeah, and Teresa and I each have partners that have our transference motivation, so we can witness it. And I'm like, you got to get out of hoping. I have to be in hope, because if you're hoping, I have to be in guilt. And like, not have to, but like it just flips me into transference. And I'm like, even on that level, I was like, we can't. This is it. I can't be in my design. I'm trying. So I do, and then I feel like I need to take action. It's a mess, but yeah, you're correct. He was not in transference.
Yeah, and that's hot.
Yeah. See, it's like the mechanics of human design are sexy, man. Mm-hmm. Living your design is sexy. The sexiest thing you can do, the most sensual thing you can do is living your design.
Yeah, well, especially when you can see it for what it is, because I used to have such a distorted view when I was in transference. And I was in innocence, and my innocence husband has like always been in innocence somehow, miraculously. And I'd be like, you need to be like, I wasn't saying this because I didn't have these words, but I'm basically telling him he needed to be in desire. And because I wasn't in desire, and I'm like projecting that onto him. And now that I know he's innocence and I'm more in desire, not that we are just in our motivation all the time. We obviously fluctuate, but I just can like see how beautiful his innocence is. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love your innocence. And it's so funny because he's always just observing. He's also on the roof, so he's just aloof as hell. And when I do ask him for his observations, I'll be like, well, why didn't you tell me that? And he's like, well, you didn't ask. You know? So it's like he has these amazing observations where he just really sees things. But if I don't ask him, he's not going to tell me.
Yeah. Awesome.
How's making love to a projector versus a sacral being?
It's different. My last long-term relationship before my husband was a manifesting generator with 3420 with like 9 channels. I mean, just very like, lots of energy.
Very fixed.
Very, and almost borderline addiction in the sexual category. So it was like a shock to not have that to not have that expectation from a partner constantly, which also had like I guess I had some trauma around that I've been working through in this relationship. And my projector husband is so gracious to like allow me to like, hey, that triggers me, and like help me work through that. And he'll like help guide me through that. But it's very different, very like softer. I want to feel like I'm a feeler, so it's like softer. It's not as, I don't want to say powerful as far as like the feeling or orgasmic or anything, but it's just like, there's not that motor that, you know, behind it. There's not a frustrated generator who's trying to burn out their sacral motor. It's very different, you know, very, very different.
Well, and now thinking back to what we were talking about earlier, but he's probably, if he was borderline addiction, then very frustrated. And that's kind of how it was with my ex. It's like we both were frustrated. And so that's just what it wasn't, you know, sensual and soft and all of those things that I like. But so I can imagine it was like, oh, you were dealing with a very frustrated generator.
We were both like getting our satisfaction out of burning out our sacral motors together. And like, that was the relationship, you know. I was like, oh, interesting. Very interesting to see how that was working. Yeah. And I can understand why women, men, anyone alike could feel like they want more in their relationship if they're in partnership with somebody who's in their not self theme, or a generator specifically who's frustrated and they're like, all you want is sex for me, and all, you know, and the women who are trying to soften, or anyone who's trying to soften in their relationship, and they want more sensuality, and, you know, they want it more meaningful and deep and more pleasure. and they're with these frustrated generators that are just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I just need to do this to like feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
And that's one of the, in that orgasmic meditation community, one of the core teachings was that men tend to lead with their desires and withhold a lot of their feelings. And women are kind of taught to like, it's okay to lead with your feelings, but withhold a lot of your desires. So some of my friends' work is like just getting people to open up about what do you really want? You know, what are your desires? Like, let's get those out and start experiencing some of the body stuff that wants to come out, because we're so just fixed mentally of what's supposed to, you know, oh, how's your relationship? Oh yeah. How much sex are you having? Oh, 3 times a week, that's not enough. Like something must be wrong. You know, like all of these stupid homogenizations that we have. It's like, you know, tap into the body. Like, what are you desiring? And like, what really is going to bring you that satisfaction? Because maybe it's not what you think it is, and it's not the consistency or the, you know, amount you're having. But yeah, you want something sensual or soft, or, you know, you need to explore some kink in your life. And like, you know, you've maybe got the transitoriness and you need new experiences to have, or, you know, all the different streams that are there. You can see how the marriage, the tribal, is what's accepted and what's okay, and pretty much anything else is like considered taboo. So I think there's so much of us, especially sexually, that are just like not going where we want to go. That would really fulfill us in a way, because it makes it, you know, weird or whatever.
Yeah. And the distortion that can happen for sacral beings, thinking that they need the intense sexual relationships, you know, to burn off that energy, literally. So they think, well, that's what I need to feel good. And really that feels like a disconnection from their sacral response, you know, and getting in their body. And there's that embodiment piece again, you know, moving your body, taking salt scrub and rubbing it all over your body, just feeling your own body and being soft and pleasurable with your own body and seeing how that feels. And then bringing that, like getting satisfied in a less aggressive way.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were both talking about this before. I mean, again, this is all just very personal, and I've accepted it at this point.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're going there. But Brandy and I were talking about how sleeping alone has actually improved our sex lives with our husbands, because we're able to like have our own sex life with ourselves now. And that's kind of, I've been with my husband for a long time. And so when you're sleeping next to somebody for a very long, and of course, serial monogamous, like I've never really slept alone, and let alone all the deconditioning benefits that come from that. But just being able to like come home to yourself at the end of the day and develop that relationship with yourself sexually, I think is really important. And it's made me bring that, like I learn about myself still, you know, and I bring that to my relationship now.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's like giving yourself permission. I saw a post the other day that was like, if your partner isn't okay with you like having self-pleasure practices, like break up with them. I was like, why is there such a stigma around that? Like, and I think it's just, I don't know, to be honest, men being very sensitive and saying, well, if you're pleasuring yourself, I can't pleasure you, and blah, blah, blah. Cause like I, as a woman, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I don't give a shit if what he's doing on his own time. I'm like, you got to do what you got to do. Like, I'm not taking it as a personal thing. If you need to go have your own experience with yourself. But for some reason, I feel like, and maybe there are some women that are offended by that, but I don't know.
Yeah. Again, control, you know, inadequacy, jealousy, you know, all that stuff that's not great. And if your partner has an amazing practice like that, it's going to transfer into the relationship. Your dynamic ways, you know, so it's like better for everybody. And they say for the 59.6, I heard on John and Amy's podcast that he said something really interesting. And let me know if this resonates with you, but I think he said the 59.6 has to first be intimate with themselves before they can be anybody else. And you have to constantly be discovering intimacy within you.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, you know, my husband and I have talked about before, because I feel like I've definitely started developing that intimacy with myself, and he's a 659 as well, but he, it's almost like I've noticed him maybe not feeling safe to feel that way just because trauma and other things. And so doing things like somatic experiencing, I feel like that's helped him and develop. Yeah, just it's like if you can't be intimate with yourself, how can you be intimate with another person in that way, you know?
Yeah. And sex as a way to avoid intimacy, I think, is such a concept that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Especially with my solar plexus. Avoid. Oh, I got this sacrum water. I can avoid all day long. And I think, too, a lot of it is like with the conditioning around men and their shying away from thinking about their partner, or anybody thinking about their partner in a self-pleasure practice or anything like that, feels to me a lot like frustrated generators or non-sacrals living as frustrated generators. And they're like, well, if you're doing that and you're feeling good that way, then I'm not necessary, but you're also my outlet to get rid of my frustration.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of stuff there, you know?
A whole lot. Well, and just like taking things personally, it's like, that comes up in relationships so much.
Yeah, they're not aware. They're just, you know, their mind will take them somewhere else. But like mechanically, it's like, oh, your body is, you know, that's an outlet for me to get rid of this frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you spin it, I look at it as like, okay, I'm not responsible for 100% of your orgasms. Like, yes, like, excellent. You know, like take some, you know.
Yeah, it's taking ownership of your own body, you know, and not putting that on another person. And I know I hear like a lot of women struggle with orgasm, and it's like, well, do you know your own body? Because how are you going to be able to guide your partner around your body if you don't know your own body? And then you're putting all that pressure on your partner to figure out how to pleasure you when you don't know how to pleasure yourself.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Something
And
to think about.
Broken, and we better fix it.
Yeah.
Rabbit hole, and you know, yeah. It's
ooh, it's getting hot in here. Like, I'm sweating from this conversation.
She's responding.
I was afraid what her sexual blueprint is, but maybe we can't go there.
The sexual blueprint. That was really cool. So if you guys, I don't know if YouTube have seen it, but that Sex, Love, and Goop show, they talk about it on there as well.
Yeah. So that's my friend I've been talking about. Her teacher was Jaya, who invented this.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I've used her for a long time. And it's so interesting to see. So there's 5 different types. There's sensual, sexual, energetic, kinky, and then shapeshifter. And each one holds a different kind of flavor. You know, some like the energy play and the waiting and the anticipation. And then sexual is like just like intercourse and nudity. And sensual is like the senses. And then kinky is like taboo stuff. And it was funny learning that first and then coming to human design and looking at the sexual streams and seeing the different blueprints within the different streams. It's like it almost matches up in such an interesting way.
Yeah. Mine's energetic.
Yeah. Energetic, yeah.
When you're feeling cognition.
Yeah.
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 That would make sense.
Yeah. And you're surprised too. It's like you would go in, sometimes you might go into the test thinking like, oh, I know what I am, and then be totally surprised. And also there's also this premise that your partner's top, because you are like a percentage of each.
Yeah. And
that your partner's top percentage is, there's a high chance that it's your lowest.
Oh yeah.
So understanding that there's even that gap in it.
Well, and there another opposites attract, the genetic imperative. It goes back to human design, says the same exact thing, you know. I think so many of these practices are all saying the same thing in such a cool, unique way.
So if there's one takeaway of this hour and a half live of all things super personal, explore your design and explore, you know, your profile. And look at the sexuality streams and just like explore your own design before you try to like figure out how you work with someone else.
Yeah.
You know, because that stuff just naturally unfolds. You know, following strategy and authority, we say that all the time. You know, you don't have to think about any of the rest of your chart. Actually, it's all just like mind stuff. But if you want to explore that, just explore your own self before you try to figure out how your partner fits with you.
And knowing that this was so cool is like you match up differently with different people. Your different streams will be activated. You know, your blueprint might change, you know, and I think there's so much jealousy that comes in that of like, you know, why is he or she that way with that person, but not with me? Sometimes, you know, the third line, breaking bond, rejection, whatever, will be different with someone else, or the pursuer pursued. Now I want to be the one pursuing versus be, you know, so all those different things, it really depends on the other and the partner, the way, or what gets brought out in you. So it's just, yeah, we can't possibly know. And that's why, like you said, it's so important to know your design and just follow your strategy and authority and watch it unfold.
Yeah, no choice.
Yeah, we must be 9-0 because we didn't even look at any of the comments today.
We're all like focused in on this conversation. This is a great conversation. But if anybody has any questions just in the last couple minutes here as we're wrapping up that we didn't get to, Carla's asking, what are the sexual streams? I believe, is that in the Sexuality or the Sexuality book?
Yeah, there's a couple lectures. Yeah. It's so tribal is like based on need and support. And people are more focused on like the bond and being in partnership together to like survive in a way. So they say like sex is kind of on the back burner. It like gets worked into the contract. And then the individual stream is more like romantic and like the eye gazing and the music and the senses and emotions. And then the collective is like sex as an experience, like sexual talent. Like I want to do it in different ways and like kind of like discover something through our sexuality, which all the blueprints, you know, which is fascinating. But it is interesting. I had this thought this morning that with the cross of planning and being in the 40-37, the 40-37 is not about sex. It's the gate of masturbation and the gate of cuddling.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's no sex there. So I'm like, this is, you know, this background frequency isn't really about fucking at all. It's more about
it will be soon though. It's almost like, I hate to say this, but maybe it's a good thing that fertility rates are going down. I feel like people are gonna be having a lot more sex after 2027.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But it makes sense why this like sexual revolution never really like took hold like mainstream, you know. I think that they didn't support it.
Everyone's
makes a lot of
trying,
sense.
so they keep trying.
Yeah.
Guilt motivation, 3-5 sacral generator. Any insight? Probably have to be a little more specific, like any insight on dating, on sexuality, on relationships. That might be a little too or like not personal, but like a unique, that's a very unique question. Very personal to you.
You say unique and I say broad. It's unique and we need it pinpointed.
But it's like you might need to like see your chart kind of situation, you know, to be able to really.
Yeah, I wonder what 5 would be like in their bonding strategies. I wonder what the 3. I'd be interested to know what the bonds made and broken looks like on the personality side versus like my body literally rejecting. Like,
it's wild. I have a 3-5 teenager. It's wild. Wild. Wild.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
I feel them like get away from me. Like, I don't want to be around you anymore type of.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like with watching her like go through life and I'm just like, wow. Like she just broke her bond with public school today.
Power to her, you know?
Yeah.
No choice.
No choice, baby. Does a person's sexual blueprint run parallel with a person's love language? Is it essentially the same thing?
No.
Yeah, this is more like in the physical.
Yeah.
Like, do you like being spanked versus?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder your guys' take on the love languages, because I feel like those are, I don't know, for some reason those don't sit well in my body anymore. Like I used to be open to that idea, but now I'm kind of like, it's not differentiated enough even.
Well, I think my defined ego likes mine words of affirmation. Yeah.
But my likes acts of service and gift giving.
Yeah. So I mean, I could like connect like the percentages of those with like centers.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I guess it probably somebody's like first conscious inclination of that could be what's going on in their chart, but also I wonder, it's like, is that the mind? You know, with most things like that, I'm like, is it the mind? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the problem with any of those tests you take. It's your mind taking the test. That's why I love human design, because it's like, here's your body who doesn't have a say in your life right now. This is what it wants. And then you start exploring. You're like, holy shit, it is. That's what it wants. Like, it's so obvious.
Or maybe your not self needs it. Like, I have a completely open ego. Of course, I want words of affirmation. I need validation all the time for my not self. But my body actually really just wants physical touch because I have a 659.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. And my 659 is unconscious. So that's also why I would have no idea the effect my aura would have on anybody.
Well, my husband's he's, like I said, 3740. His love language is physical touch. And acts of service. So defined ego.
It's
3740 bargain, getting something in
Yeah.
return for what he's giving you.
Like, pinpoint it to those things, but yeah.
Oh, and here's a good example. Undefined G center, my love language changes in every relationship. That's what I'm saying. It's like, you don't know what your love language is going to be, especially if you have an undefined G. That's a great point.
Yeah.
All right.
So, last question, since you brought it up. You have an undefined G.
No, I don't.
No, he doesn't. He has 2551.
Oh, he has 2551. That's right. Yeah, never mind. We all have defined G's.
3 G centers just yapping away on here.
A sacral that doesn't know when enough is enough, a non-sacral. So we have to sacral tap out.
Yeah, I'm like, my sacral is complete right now. Oh, I love this conversation. I was very excited. It's clearly my 659. I mean, and this is kind of what I'm seeing the more I get into like my career and coaching, the more I know what kind of conversations I want to have, the more I know what kind of clients I want to work with. And it's because my sacral responds to intimacy and creativity, and a conversation like this like feels very intimate to me. So I get excited about it.
Very intimate and on a very big public platform.
Yep.
We're out there now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks
so much.
Travis.
Thanks for the invitation and the recognition. Appreciate it. A lot of fun. Yeah.
And if you want to work with Travis, I would assume you're open for readings right now.
Yep. Open
People
for
can book with you.
Yep. On my Instagram, there's the link there, and you can book directly through there.
Yeah, he'll be tagged in the caption of this video. So
awesome.
Projector.
Thanks so much.
Guidance. Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Travis.
Right.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
All right.